play a game?
Why, yes, I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Live from Little Rock, it's Shane Plays Radio, Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Thanks so much for joining us. Whether you're listening live over the air on 96.5 FM, The Answer in the Little Rock and Central Arkansas metro area, or if you're listening online via the stream, online stream that is, at 96.5 FM, theanswer.com, or if you're listening delayed by podcast or on Krypton Radio, I don't care how you're listening. I'm just glad you're here and spending your time with me and my guest as we geek out again on this weekly Geek Fest. This is Geek Talk Radio. At this point on Saturday afternoon, it is live, so people can call in at 501-823-0965, or you can tweet me at Shane Plays. That's ShanePlays. You can also, speaking of ShanePlays, check out the show notes at shaneplays.com. The show notes are up there right now, and they have cool information on my guests, and we have one news item, a grand total of one news item today, so you can check that out, and then we just have lots of cool links on our guest, who just happened to be with Shroud of the Avatar, which is Portalarium's upcoming exciting, I mean, you can play it in alpha right now, but it's coming quote-unquote live soon. And then that's, of course, from Richard Garriott, Lord British himself of Ultima fame and otherwise, Man's Gone to Space and all that other stuff. But I'll introduce my guests here in a second. And I'm actually really excited to have these guys because, and I love Richard Garriott, who doesn't? But a lot of people have heard from Richard Garriott at various times as in his career, but you don't always get to hear about the people that work with Richard Garriott and bring the products to life. So I'm very excited to be talking, and it's going to be Starr Long, who has actually worked with Richard Garriott for something like 20 years off and on, and then Mathew Anderson, who wrangles the community for Portalarium. So this is going to be a really exciting show. I'll introduce them just here in a moment. Before that, just want to get to my housekeeping notes. One, we've got, again, I mentioned you can go to shaneplays.com and get the show notes. Last week's show is archived on the blog, and out on the podcast, all that stuff. The show goes out as a podcast a few days after the show. Last week, we talked with Chris Avalone about Pathfinder Kingmaker, which is the first single-player Pathfinder RPG coming in computer game form, and that Kickstarter was successful and finished last Tuesday, so excited to see what we're going to get with that. Now, the cool thing about Shroud of the Avatar, and we'll talk with these guys more here in a second about that, is you can play it as both an offline single-player experience and a multiplayer experience. So I think that's really cool, and we'll talk to them about that here in a moment. But you can catch the blog the podcast a few days after the show on iTunes, on the blog, at Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and we're now on SoundCloud. I've put the entire archive of 100. I think this is the 108th show up on SoundCloud. And so they'll be adding each week, and there's a lot of people that listen to stuff on SoundCloud, so the show can be found there now, and more other fine podcast directories. Last but never least, Shane Plays is also carried on Krypton Radio. Krypton Radio is sci-fi for your Wi-Fi. KryptonRadio.com. Now, I don't have the ad this week. I'll start reading it next week. But we will have, I'm going to be doing a PSA for Pause at the Net, which is going to be a fundraiser August 11th through 13th. It's like come play tennis and raise money to help dogs find homes and that sort of stuff. And we had this organization when we had Jeffrey Nodelman on, that was the guy that produced the Venture Brothers and has done a lot of worked on Doug and a lot of other animation. This organization came on with him because he was doing an art show in conjunction with them. So we'll have more on that starting next week. Now, having yapped all that out, let me introduce it's important, Zach. You hear that? It's on paper. So it's important because this is on paper. Okay, so I've got Starr Long and Wesley Anderson with Portalarium's Shroud of the Avatar, Forsaken Virtues. Portalarium's Darkstarr, that's in quotes, Darkstarr Long is the executive producer, and Mathew Berek in quotes, Anderson is the senior community manager. They're joining us to talk about Shroud of the Avatar and what's cool and unique about this exciting MMO. And as I mentioned, you can also play it as a single player experience. So Starr and Mathew, do I have the pleasure of speaking with you?
You do.
All right. Now, who was that?
That was Starr.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's Starr. Now, Starr, I'll get to Mathew here in a second, but I watched Lord British's birthday bash. Were you the one that was dancing in front of the whiteboard every time y'all announced the totals?
I am quite the unskilled dancer. Yes, that is me.
Okay,
I thought the shaved head, unskilled dancer wearing all black. That's me.
Okay, and Mathew, you're there as well, correct?
Yes, that's right. Hello.
Hey, glad to have you guys on. Thanks so much for joining us. Really exciting, to be talking to you about Shroud of the Avatar. I've got some friends who play it pretty heavily. I played it off and on. I'm trying to, spend some more time with it. But what little time, relatively, I've probably spent, 10 hours in it or something like that. I can tell it's a different game, and you're trying to do things differently. And I know so you're also trying to get a high amount of community involvement. So before we get to Shroud of the Avatar, I do have one news item. I gave the news team the day off. They usually work on Saturdays. And I said, guys, don't worry about it. Y'all take the day off. I'll take care of the news segment. So we've got an exciting one news item. So, Zach,
okay.
Go ahead and hit us with that sound I asked you before the show if we had. All right. So that was, of course, Doctor Who mash up there, mix up there. Are you guys Doctor Who fans at all?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So did you see the announcement? It's all over the place, but I grabbed a news item from deadline.com. The 13th Time Lord is going to be revealed tomorrow after Sunday's Wimbledon final. Yes.
What?
Yes, after the Wimbledon final, they are going to reveal who the 13th Doctor will be.
Who could it be? Who's it going to be?
I don't know. There's speculation all over the place. I don't know.
Who do you think?
I honestly,
Idris Elba. No, I don't know.
Yeah, Idris Elba. That wouldn't be bad. Rowan Atkinson. Yeah, I think Mr. Bean as
yeah.
I don't know who it's going to be. There's been a lot of names thrown out there. I know that there was a lot of hope and anticipation it might be a woman. I honestly have no clue who it might be. Who do you hope for? I guess I should ask.
I have no idea.
It's hard.
If it is a woman, it would be the first woman Doctor, I believe, right?
Yes, it would. And there's a lot of. They've been, teasing that because, of course, they had the Master become Missy, right? So they established in the show that even though in the past canon, Time Lords were Time Lords and Time Ladies were Time Ladies, they've shown very clearly that, that they can change genders, I guess, when they regenerate. And of course, I'm sure they did that with Missy to kind of put the toe in the water to, maybe try to get into a female Doctor Who at some, the lady that's done Missy has done a fantastic job and has shown that, a woman can play that quirky doctor, personality and still keep it, fun and exciting. And so I don't know. I have no idea. And the BBC has said very firmly, no, it's not going to be a woman this time. I don't know. I have no clue who it's going to be. So I'll tell you, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because, I do want to talk about Shroud of the Avatar, which is why I wasn't even going to do one news item at all to give you guys the whole show. And then that came out last night and I was like, well, I've got to tell people about that.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal. I will say this. I like Peter Capaldi a lot as the Doctor. I think this season is the first season that's really been his season where he's come into his own. Yeah. So I think right about the time that he's coming into his own, he's leaving. So that bothers me, but it is what it is. Yeah. And I love Bill. We're only going to get one season of Bill as a companion, and Nardole was great. So I don't know. Yeah. It is what it is.
Yeah, I think the longest stretch has it been 4 years for one Doctor? 3, 4?
Well, Tom Baker, was it Tom Baker? Did it? he was the, I can't believe, fifth. Man, fourth. How am I messing this up? He was a long running one. I think he had the longest run, and then David Tennant, I think, had the second longest run.
Yeah. Well, as cool as it would be, we can both safely, Starr and I, say that it won't be Lord British. As cool as that might be.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be very cool. So,
they offered, but he said no.
Yeah, he said, I'm just too busy.
Because we're busy. We're busy with our game. So.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And he's like, look, I've really been to space. I mean, you want me to come play? You want me to play somebody who's been to space? I've really been to space. Did you know that, Zach? I got to ask Zach here, my engineer. Are you familiar with now, guys? This is my Padawan, Zach. Okay, I'm still training him and showing him the geeky arts. Are you familiar with Richard Garriott, aka Lord British, Zach?
I am not. Sorry.
Okay. Have you heard of the Ultima games? And if you say no, I'm going to cry in my beard right now.
I'm sorry.
I'm crying, Zach. I'm crying.
Oh.
I'm crying.
Is he young?
Okay.
He's forgiven if he's young.
He is young. But he's trying.
We can forgive him.
He is a Padawan. He is a Padawan that shows promise. So, in fact, he texted me last night and he said, "What are your thoughts on the regular version or extended version of Batman v Superman?" And that's a good geeky question. So, he's coming along.
He has promise.
Yeah. And he's already seen Spider-Man Homecoming and I haven't. So he's got that on me. So,
yeah. Well, that space anecdote is actually I have a funny anecdote about that and about us going to Comic-Con next week. Because so yes, Richard, who's our creative director, who kind of invented computer role playing games like in the 80s. His first game was in 1979. And
Alcalabeth, right?
Right, yeah. And every now and then I kind of forget, he's been to space, because we work together and we, make games. And so we're at Disney earlier in the year for the 20th anniversary of the Ultima Dragons, which is the fan club devoted to his games. And we're in costume and we're eating lunch, and I see these people keep looking at us while we're eating lunch. And finally, you get up the courage, and the guy walks over and he's like, "Are you Lord British? I loved your games. I grew up playing your games, and I'm the director of programming at Comic-Con. Have you guys ever considered having a panel at Comic-Con?" And I sort of freak out, I'm like, "Oh my God, Comic-Con!" Whoa, and Richard's kind of "Oh, sure," kind of not really super nonchalant. And I'm like, "Richard, it's Comic-Con. Why aren't you freaking out?" I'm trying to sort of be cool, and I cannot. I cannot be cool because it's freaking Comic-Con, right? Yeah. And then someone later was like, of course Richard didn't freak out. The dude's been to space.
He's been to space.
Everything else is oh yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. So Zach, for listeners that don't know, and for Zach, Richard Garriott, who is one of the driving forces behind Shroud of the Avatar. Now, Shroud of the Avatar is not Ultima. There are legal reasons over the names and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I'll just say that if you like Ultima and you like Lord British and all of that, then you should check this MMO out. And I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
But it's got a lot of Ultima had the virtues, the paths of virtue, and there are paths in here that deal with that kind of thing. And it's Shroud of the Avatar and anyway. So but Richard Garriott was basically the pioneering force behind computer role-playing games. Now, a lot came along, but at the very beginning, he was out there doing computer role-playing games, and he did Alcalabeth, and I think World of Doom, I think, was the subtitle for it, and he did, he's done the Ultima series, which was, to call it groundbreaking is, almost not sufficient, with as many people have loved those games and the other games that have, basically come about because of it. It basically created a genre of computer gaming. Now, he obviously made money doing that. Okay, I don't know how much money he's made. It's not my business, but he made some money doing that, and he was able, for a while, the Russians were allowing people to go to the International Space Station, for a certain amount of money. And he went with the Russian cosmonauts to space and hung out. How many days was he up there?
10 days.
10 days.
Yeah,
10? 10 days in space, hanging out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he came back. So, what compare, people can come up and say, well, they say, you just won $1 million. And he's like, yeah, but I've been to space. I mean, that's pretty hard to top. That's pretty hard to trump that. So, but anyway, as much as I like Richard Garriott and as much as I like Lord British, we're not here to talk about his history today, although, his shadow looms large, definitely, over Shroud of the Avatar. That was the news segment, folks. It was short this week on purpose. Don't forget that for every $1 of Patreon support that the show gets, the news team gets a penny an hour raise. I mean, that right there, that's a win-win. That's a deal for everybody. So we do have sponsors. We're very blessed to have them. They don't pay all the bills. So if anybody ever wants to support the show through Patreon, I will certainly not object, and I will appreciate it very much. Now, let's talk about Shroud of the Avatar. I think I've got, hold on, guys. Let me see if I can get this going. Yeah, got a little Shroud of the Avatar music there. Can y'all hear that? Can you hear that, Zach?
No.
I can hear it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if the phones can hear it or not. Anyway, hope I'm not breaking any copyright laws by playing that in the background. So, Shroud of the Avatar, Forsaken Virtues, is a fantasy RPG that combines a single-player narrative with a sandbox MMO created by a team that includes Richard Lord British Garriott, the creator of the Ultima series, Starr Long, who was the director of Ultima Online, and then you're also, were you not in a senior position with Ultima 9 as well, Starr?
Yeah, well, I actually started on Ultima 9 and then convinced them to let me move over and do Ultima Online. So I was only on Ultima 9 for a little bit before moving on to Ultima Online.
Gotcha. Okay. So, but I mean, you've got quite a history yourself here. I'll just mention a couple of things. One, you worked on, you've been with Richard Garriott in some form, for quite a while now. You're also with Destination Games. You've been Portalarium. You were the original director of the early graphical multiplayer game Ultima Online, and you were also, this was interesting, you were an executive producer at the Walt Disney Company on educational games and apps. That's a pretty big deal. So how hard was it to get was it for Lord British to get you back working with him?
Not too hard, actually. We have a really great partnership. There's I actually started my career at Origin way back in 1992, and my first project that I got to make, lucky enough, was Ultima Online, working with Richard, and then we left Origin and we founded Destination Games together, me and Richard and Robert Garriott. And then we later became part of NCSoft with that company. And then after that, Disney kind of, made me this sort of offer I couldn't refuse.
You woke up and there was a horse head on the pillow next to you?
Well, no, it was more about more like money.
Okay.
And an opportunity like that. They were. It was a sort of this time in my life where I was, decided I wanted to have kids. And, they were like, hey, don't you want to, how about making games with educational content in them? And I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. And they were like, and we'll give you a lot of money to do it. And I was like, oh, that sounds even cooler.
That sounds great.
That was an amazing experience. Like the Walt Disney Company, the kind of resources and the sort of talented artists you get to work with is amazing. But I had my time there, and then Richard said, hey, wouldn't it be cool to make, a mashup between Ultima Online, your sort of first sort of groundbreaking title that kind of jump-started the MMO genre, and a single-player narrative like, the Ultima games, but with like modern technology. We sort of made up this term, selective multiplayer. Okay. And I was like, wow, that sounds like a really cool idea, but like, how are you going to fund it? Who you're working with? And he was like, hey, we're using this new technique called crowdfunding. And I'm like, oh, hold on, let me Google that.
Yeah.
I mean, because this is back in 2013, and not many people,
Yeah.
I mean, it really had been like the Double Fine guys who had done it at this point.
Right.
And I was like, oh, wow, that sounds really cool. And like one of the things I really get excited about is like doing something new that no one's done before. I mean, that's what, I really liked working on Ultima Online, because like up until that point, people were still playing games with direct dial-up, and the biggest game up until that point had been like Genie Air Warrior with like 30,000 people, and so there were no games for a subscription, or none of that existed, and like Electronic Arts didn't even have a website, when we started making Ultima Online. So, I mean, doing things that are new are exciting for me. And so I was like, oh, crowdfunding is cool. I'd love to learn how to do that and, do this sort of transparent and open development method. And I'm like, okay, well, if your Kickstarter is successful, I'm in. I'm totally in. Like,
okay,
and so the Kickstarter was successful, and they made me. So it wasn't actually very hard, because I mean, I love working with Richard. We have this very interesting partnership. Richard is this amazing creative force, and I use that term force specifically because he has this amazing vision,
right.
But he also needs this high level of organization to go with it, to make sure that things happen. And so
vision is not enough to produce a product. I mean, there's vision is great, but there's plenty of failed visions out there that don't have a good team around it. So
right, and that's kind of where my skill set comes in, of like building a schedule and making sure that things happen and making sure priorities are right, and we play really well off of each other, especially because we've done it a lot, and so so that it wasn't hard to convince me.
Okay, so that's pretty cool. So Kickstarter kind of led you to change careers again. So and I'll ask this. I don't want to ask it right now, but if you can talk about this kind of thing. I'm kind of curious, what's the total amount? And I want to introduce Mathew a little further here, so I'll get into this later with you. But maybe what's the total amount of crowdfunding you've done, so far? I don't know how many, what numbers you can share or not, but maybe we can get into that later.
Well, we're completely transparent with that. We post that. I mean, that's kind of one of our quote brands about the way we make the game. We decided early on that, normally the way you fund a game, like before crowdfunding, the way you fund a game is like the people who give you the money are either publishers or investors. Right. And those people have a lot of money, and they generally, quote, know what they're doing with their money, and they know the risks involved, and they understand, what's going to happen, right? Well, but that's not how crowdfunding works. Crowdfunding is like it's just everybody. It's just just normal people. It's your customers who are giving you the money to make the game.
And in crowdfunding, a lot of people, even though this isn't a totally accurate picture of what crowdfunding is, a lot of people see it as merely pre-purchasing a product. And that's not all crowdfunding is. I mean, it's different than that, but that's how a lot of people use it. So it's a completely different thinking process.
Well, and legally and technically, that's exactly. I mean, that it is a pre-purchase of a product, but we wanted to be more responsible than that. Like we wanted our backers to completely understand what we were doing and where every dollar they gave us was being spent, and exactly how much money we raised every day. And so, like we have a running total that's on our website of exactly how much money we're making, and then every day we post. We're an agile team, which means that we have what's called a stand-up every day, and a stand-up is where everybody on the team meets in a room and we stand up and we talk about what we worked on yesterday, what we're going to work on today, and if we're blocked, and we take those notes of that meeting and we post those to our forums. Which are public. Do they
still call that stand up a scrum? Didn't they used to call it a scrum in Agile? Is that what you're talking about, or is this something different?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's another name for it. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay.
And so so every day our backers know exactly what everyone's working on, and so and how much, and where their money is going, quote unquote. And so far we've raised about $11.4 million.
Oh, I see it right here. Yeah, it's on the fact page. Yeah, $11,818,191. Okay, guys, I gotta get us to a break. Got to pay the bills here with sponsors and whatnot. When we come back, Mathew, I want to go into a little bit about what you do. Because I think a lot of people think of as a community manager as you just monitor the forums, and I know it's a lot more than that. So I want to kind of talk to you about that, and then what you think of this game and everything, and then I want to try to talk about what makes Shroud of the Avatar cool and why people who haven't checked it out should. And I've also got a question via Twitter that I'll ask you from Alan Marcus on Twitter has a question for you. So when we come back with Starr Long and Mathew Anderson from Shroud of the Avatar, Forsaken Virtues, right here on Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio.
The smell of mildew emanates from wet stone walls. The only choices before you are to enter the door to the north or travel back up the stairs from whence you came.
Okay. I go to the door to the north.
In this room you encounter an event promoter.
Arkansas RPG Con is the Arkansas convention for all tabletop role-playing games. Arkansas RPG Con will be held on Saturday, October 21st at the Gene Moss Building, located at 913 East Sevier Street in Benton, Arkansas. Early bird tickets are just $7, so visit arpgcon.com for all the details about Arkansas RPG Con. Okay, well, I guess I go to Arkansas RPG Con.
Yeah, that does sound pretty fun.
Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today.
The die is cast.
Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions. Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays. Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. I'm talking with Starr Long and Mathew Anderson from Portalarium. They're working with Lord British himself, Richard Garriott, on the Shroud of the Avatar Forsaken Virtues MMO that can also be played as a single-player experience. So we talked with Starr before the break, and he was talking about how he got kind of enticed back in after working with Disney for several years to working with his longtime partner there, Richard Garriott. and we were talking about some of the financials and stuff behind Shroud of the Avatar. I want to talk real quick with Mathew Anderson, and then we're going to go more into just some more generally Shroud of the Avatar stuff, what makes the game cool, and that sort of thing. Folks, you can call in at 501-823-0965. I've also got Twitter at Shane Plays, and I've already got one question on Twitter that we'll get to as soon as we can. So, Mr. Anderson, are you there?
Yes, I am, sir.
All right. Well, so do you get, every time I see your name, I want to be like Hugo Weaving and go, Mr. Anderson. Does anyone ever do that to you? Is that an old tired joke?
I get that a lot. I throughout my career in the game industry, most studios, the people that I work with will call me Mr. Anderson, and I've managed to avoid that at Portalarium here.
Well, Starr, can we do something about that? Can we make sure that Mathew feels more at home at Portalarium and everybody can start referring, take their sunglasses off and look at him and go, Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson. Of course, we're making a Matrix really reference for you younger geeks out there. Younger geeks. What did you say? It's hard to do that, Starr?
Yeah, it's really hard to resist. It's difficult. I've resisted this whole time, but
have you? You're a stronger man than I. Good. Don't. Yeah. Feel free. Yeah. You're a stronger man than I. But all joking aside, Mathew, I see that not only are you a senior community manager with Portalarium on Shroud of the Avatar, but that's kind of your career. I found your website, and you've been doing this community manager thing for a long time. It's actually, it looks like kind of a passion of yours. So tell us a little bit about, because a lot of people think that a community manager, that all you do is just keep an eye on the forums. What do you do as community manager?
Yeah, it definitely revolves in much part around the discussion areas of the game. And for our game, Shroud of the Avatar, the forums is a critical centerpiece where we go and interact with the community. We answer questions that they bring up, respond to discussions, and also post news there as well, blogs from the developers, what maps they're working on, that sort of thing. So I'm monitoring that on a daily basis, weekdays, weekends. Community management's kind of a 24/7 thing. And when you have we're very responsible with, like Starr was talking about, the backers' money is all we have for this project. And so we are very careful with, how many people are on the team, what are they doing, that sort of thing. And because we have a smaller team, we tend to wear many hats. And so while I'm primarily talking with the community, I also do all the social media. So I retweeted actually your announcements of this podcast and radio show just this morning, and work to get the word out about what we're doing for the game.
Yeah, and you also, behind the scenes, you coordinated with me, for a few weeks to put the show together. So I guess I just want people, it's more than just managing the forums. I mean, it's, most games that are, have any sort of team behind them, and it's not just one or two people working in a room, and there's nothing wrong with, there's some great games that come with those, from those smaller developers, but any game with like kind of a public or a company behind it or a team usually has a community manager these days. So it seems to have gotten, and especially like you're saying with something like Shroud of the Avatar, where you're depending 100% on backer money, and
if you have
telethons,
if you have a game or any product let's reverse this. And if anybody who's listening ever had a question about a product they purchased or wanted to get involved in discussing that product, games, of course, with others, then, they're posting on social media, that sort of thing. You need a community manager. You need a social media manager. Social media usually being incorporated into the community manager title, because that is the person who is taking that feedback, responding to those players or those customers, and bringing it to the team that's making the product and making the game. And then, in turn, that team who needs to update the community on, whether it's a new feature or an update, a fix to something else, there needs to be a path for that. And I'm one of those that helps manage that path.
Nice. Okay, very cool. So, so community managers is really important. It's, again, can you hitting the dead horse? It's more than just keeping an eye on the forums, even though that's an important aspect too. I also want to mention real quick, I will plug on Mr. Anderson's behalf that he is also the author of 2 published books. He's got Our Cosmic Story, Exploring Life, Civilization, in the Universe, a big picture view by Mathew Anderson, and also looks like you have a book on China. And both of those can be found on Amazon. People go to MathewAnderson.com, that's 1T, not 2, to learn more about that aspect of Mathew. So I've got a question here, Starr, for you, but it also ties in kind of with the community management aspect. On Twitter, Alan Marcus, who is at McAllister on Twitter, wrote in and said, "Hey, Shane, ask Starr Long about the difficulties of open development, early reviews, player complaints, and staying the course." Would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I actually give sort of regular talks about our development methodology, about open development, and that is one of the big challenges. I call it the sort of black hole of negative feedback. So one of the challenges is that it's kind of the sausage making. There's this really famous quote by Otto von Bismarck about no one should see how sausages and laws are made because they're both very, very messy and ugly, and it's kind of what game development is like. It's pretty messy, and it moves forward and backwards, and sometimes it's really great, and sometimes it's not, and so that's a big challenge, and so what we try to do is and the pattern we see a lot is if people come into the game and they play it and they don't stay through one release cycle. So we do monthly releases. So it's the last Thursday of the month at 10:30 a.m. and we always hit that 10:30 a.m. on the last Thursday, no matter what. Like, we're never late. We're like the latest we've ever been is like the Mac version was like 20 minutes late once. But we're always on time on that. And what we see is that if people sort of stay with us through one release cycle, they kind of get it. They sort of like, oh, this is what like development is. This is like, it's better now. Like, oh, like they fixed a bunch of bugs and the performance is slightly better. And like, this one.
Well, let me take this point to point out. Yeah, I want to get back to but let me take this point to point out. If you play Shroud of the Avatar right now, it is, alpha, beta, what would you describe it as? I mean, this is an very early access product that you're very, you're letting people come along for the ride, but this is still very much a game in development.
Exactly. We're early.
Yeah,
access.
I've got a friend.
Yeah. I mean, there's bugs. We're not done. We're not done building it. So some things are broken. The performance, the game's not fully optimized. So some scenes you go in like run really well. Some scenes you go in don't. They run really slowly. And there's still sometimes you cast a spell and like all of a sudden the whole scene crawls to a stop because like there's some bug with the particle associated with that like affects the frame rate really badly. And some people understand that. Like some people get it. They've been put in part of beta tests before and they're like, oh, this is what it's like to play a game that's still in development. However, there's a bunch of people that don't understand that, and then they tell you how badly your game sucks, and then you go home and you cry in the shower, and you get it out of your system, and you go back to work the next day, and so the one advice I would give anyone who wants to do this, who wants to do sort of open development and crowdfunding is like have a very, very thick skin, and just sort of power through it because you're going to get a ton of negative feedback because most, one of the analogies I give is like the average consumer has never interacted with a product that's half finished. Like imagine getting a TV that worked halfway or, a phone that you could send emails but doesn't actually make phone calls, which kind of is what the iPhone 1 did. But whatever.
But the next day it may start because a patch may roll out, and it may start the next day, or it may not. It's in development. Yeah. So, and I think that's a danger of, maybe danger is too strong of a word. You know, a lot of people are getting more and more used to an early access kind of environment, like on Steam or whatever. And even though the devs and the publishers bend over backwards to say this is not a finished product yet, you know, bad press, bad word of mouth or whatever will get out because of a very early build of a game, you know, which I think is a shame. Like even right now on Shroud of the Avatar, every time I log in, I have to click a button that tells me, hey, this is under construction. This game isn't finished. But even that's not enough to get people to go, oh, the game's not done yet. So anyway.
Well, we even went so far, and this was the advice of our buddies over on DayZ, because this is what they did. We even put in all caps on Steam Early Access, do not buy this game until you read all the negative reviews. Like in all caps. Like, you can't even read the description of the game until you scroll past that, and people still do it. Still people buy the game after that, reading that, and give us a negative review. And I'm like, what? Did you not read that part?
Yeah, what are we not getting here? I mean, I've got a friend who, I mean, he's been playing games forever. You know, he's put a lot of time into your game, and he's gotten upset a couple of times and, you know, really tried to make his case. And I'm like, it's early access. What do you want me to do? I don't know what to say. You know, like once they say it's finished, and then if those things are still there. But anyway, I just wanted to point that out. But having said all that, can either of you speak to, I think I've seen summer 2017 as actually being published. Is that still correct that, you know, sometime this year that the actual, you know, version 1 of the game will go out for sale?
So our goal is the end of the year. So our current target is the end of the year. We just finished the story. So summer was finished the story. So that's happening literally the release that's going to come out at the end of this month. And at the end of this month, you'll be able to play all 3 paths, truth, love, and courage, and the final path, the path of the Oracle, where you actually can get spoiler. Don't listen after this if you don't want to get a reveal. The Shroud of the Avatar. That's what's happening this month, and then we're targeting commercial release for the end of the year.
Okay, and there is a free trial, basically running almost through the end of July right now. Correct?
Correct. Through July 26th, if you go to our website, shroudoftheavatar.com, you can download the free trial version that lets you play the online version minus just a few features. But you can basically go and play unlimited hours on the online version through July 26th.
Okay, and you guys run sales and fundraisers pretty often. I'm pretty sure I got my copy on sale, if I remember right. But do y'all know yet what, like when it launches, like here's the price, here's going to be the price to buy the version 1 product. Have y'all settled on that yet?
Yes, the current price is going to be $40 to play, and that's it. Like you never have to pay anything past that ever. And then in the offline mode, everything that's we have an add-on store too. That's a bunch of like, you know, extra clothes and houses and, you know, sort of, and some like convenient stuff like extra storage space and things like that. But even like that, like the extra storage space, you can actually get in-game gold even in the online version. But in the offline mode, all that stuff that's on the add-on store, you can get with game gold. You never, in the offline version, you never. Oh,
so the gold you earn in the game, you can use for online store stuff.
In the offline version, yeah.
Wow.
So we made a decision early on that we wanted the single-player offline RPG version to sort of be sacred and be like, no, it's $40 once, and everything, even all the stuff that's in the store, and even like the sort of Kickstarter pledge stuff, all that stuff is in-game gold purchasable.
Okay. Yeah, I want to make that super clear. Another point you made was that you buy it, and then there's no monthly fees after that, even though it's an MMO.
Correct.
Right.
That's correct. It's one purchase, play forever.
Now, do you plan on continuing with the sort of fundraisers that you've been doing so far, even after you go live, or will that kind of phase out?
We don't know yet. You know, one thing that we've been very careful so far is that, all the money that we've raised so far is been spent on development. We haven't spent any money on like marketing or user acquisition, which is, so like a lot of people have never even heard of us, which for us is a good thing. Like we actually don't want a lot of people to know about us just yet because we're still in early access, and we kind of just want the hardest core people to like try us out and give us feedback.
Cool. Yeah, we were actually at RTX just over a week ago. Starr, we had a great time there meeting players that haven't heard of the game but sat down and were amazed at what we had so far.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
guys, I hate to interrupt you, Starr. I got to get us to another break. When we come back, you can finish with that thought if you want, and then also, we'll have a few minutes left. Radio always goes so quick. The joke I use is that time is a predator that stalks us all our lives. But maybe we could talk a little bit about how similar to an Ultima-like experience will this be for fans of Ultima?
Totally.
And this is not an Ultima game. Okay, I don't want to imply that, but I'm going to throw some. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to throw some love out to a sponsor, and we'll take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about Shroud of the Avatar from Portalarium with Starr Long and Mathew Anderson. So, Zach, I'm going to throw some love at Game Goblins, and then we'll cut to a break. Okay. So some goblins are your friends. Game Goblins is Central Arkansas's premier retailer of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40K, board games, card games, RPGs, miniatures, and hobby accessories. Conveniently located at 1121 South Bowman, right on the corner of Bowman and Canis and One Little Rock, and staffed by friendly employees. Game Goblins has expanded their store size, and there's plenty of room for exciting inventory and tables for play space. You'll like that space because Game Goblins has gaming events every day of the week. For all your gaming needs, I heartily recommend Game Goblins. Make sure to check out their customer loyalty program that rewards you based on your purchases. Game Goblins earns your business and keeps it. First-time customers mention Shane Plays and receive $10 off your purchase of $50 or more. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at GameGoblins.com. Tell them Shane Plays sent you.
The smell of mildew emanates from wet stone walls. The only choices before you are to enter the door to the north or travel back up the stairs from whence you came.
Okay. I go to the door to the north.
In this room you encounter an event promoter.
Arkansas RPG Con is the Arkansas convention for all tabletop role-playing games. Arkansas RPG Con will be held on Saturday, October 21st at the Gene Moss Building, located at 913 East Sevier Street in Benton, Arkansas. Early bird tickets are just $7, so visit arpgcon.com for all the details about Arkansas RPG Con. Okay. Well, I guess I go to Arkansas RPG Con.
Yeah, that does sound pretty fun.
Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today.
The die is cast.
Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions, Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays. Hey, we're back on Shane Plays Radio, Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. I'm talking with Starr Long, who's the executive producer, and Wesley Anderson, who's the senior community manager with Portalarium for Shroud of the Avatar, which is Richard Lord British Garriott's latest game. It is a fantasy MMO that can also be played as a single-player experience. So, guys, we got just a few minutes here. I wanted to mention that in addition to buying you can go to shroudoftheavatar.com and buy the game. You can get it on Steam. The basic price is $40, but it's a one-time buy, and even though it's an MMO, that's it. There's no more monthly fees, even though there's little items and stuff you can buy if you want. You can also invest in this game for the next 23 days at Seed Invest, and that's linked on the show notes at shaneplays.com. I'm sure you can find that information on shroudoftheavatar.com as well. And for a minimum investment of $499, you can actually become an investor, not just a backer, but an investor in the game. And go to seedinvest.com, Portalarium, to learn more about that. And they did not ask me to mention that, okay? I'm just telling you. I'm just throwing that out there because I think that's neat. So, how's that? How do you feel, you guys? How do you feel that Seed Invest has been going? Are you happy with it?
Yeah, we're super excited. Okay. that I was mentioning earlier that all the money we've gotten so far has been spent on development, and our Seed Invest campaign is money that we'll spend on our marketing efforts. So that'll be for videos and advertising and things like that. And we were one of the first crowdfunded games, and that's gone very well for us. And this is, last year was when they passed the Jobs Act that allows for this new type of equity crowdfunding. And so now we're doing something new, and we're one of the very first games to do this new kind of crowdfunding. The Crowfall guys did it earlier this year, and we're kind of following their lead, and it's going well. And so, it's kind of got a hockey stick kind of curve. Yeah. So most of the money comes at the very end. Yeah. But already it's, we've got a couple $100,000 raised already, and there's a lot sitting in the funnel that you can't see just yet, but it's going great. We're excited. Good. Okay. Well, as you mentioned before, yourself, Richard Garriott, you're not exactly scared of trying something new. Now, as for the game itself, it's Shroud of the Avatar, so it's got the heritage of Richard Garriott and yourself. It's got a very Ultima heritage, even though it's not an Ultima game per se. And I know it's also Tracy Hickman, who is, of course, one of the co-authors of one of my favorite fantasy worlds, Dragonlance, was also involved in the world building, I think, and the sort of the game. And I read the book, the Sword of Midras, by Tracy and Richard Garriott. What is Tracy's involvement in the actual world? I mean, is he like, okay, here's your world, have fun, or is he still involved? So he wrote the prequel novel, the first of a trilogy, and then he and Richard wrote the outline of the entire plot, including like every single NPC, the structure of the entire plot at the very when we started the project, and so and like whenever we have to make like any kind of major deviation from that, we kind of get them on the phone and we're like, hey, we're going to make we haven't had many of those, but there have been a couple of times where we're like, hey, we want to change this one big thing, and we want to make sure that it's going to fit with the overall lore of the world, and hey, how do you feel about that? And so we still consult with him periodically, and but he's also been busy doing the Void with his son, which is this cool VR immersive experience.
Oh, neat. Yeah, I
around
wasn't familiar with
yeah,
that.
so.
That's cool.
But yeah, so he's still involved when we have major changes, and again, he wrote the whole plot with Richard.
Nice. I wasn't aware that he was that deeply involved. I just thought maybe he did like a 2 or 3 page treatment and said, "Here, have fun." So that's cool. I love Tracy and Margaret. I never know if it's Weiss or Weiss, his co-author on Dragonlance. So it's always exciting when they're involved in others. And Margaret is not involved with this; it's just Tracy. But
just Tracy, yeah.
Yeah, and so there's in this. You do have the paths of virtue. I know that like when you're playing the game, you can do like the path of love, or you can do the path of this or the path of that.
Yeah.
So that concept has, kind of spiritually made the jump over. So, fans of Ultima will like to see that in here, or, they'll be glad that that's in there. So, but it's very much a fantasy MMO. I mean, it's a fantasy game in the vein of Ultima. Again, I got to be really careful. This is not an Ultima game.
Spiritual successor.
But
spiritual successor.
Yeah, spiritual successor to Ultima. But like I say, there's a lot of people out there, who don't know what Ultima is. So, this is a chance for, people to just, I don't know anything about Ultima, but this looks like a fun game and that sort of thing. So, we're actually coming up. We got, believe it or not, just a minute or two left. Radio always goes so quick. I appreciate both of you guys for coming on and for your time. I wish you success. Go ahead. I just want to give you some time for some closing thoughts here on maybe the game or what makes it cool. Mathew, why don't you go and then we'll let Starr wrap up. What do you think makes this game cool? Why should somebody who's never heard of it check it out?
Yeah, sure. Well, anybody who's been a part of the Ultima universe, this spiritual successor, they will, I think, really appreciate, because we're really bringing things together, especially these last few months. But the thing that really excites me the most, that anybody who really enjoys a game where there's other people around, or there can be other people around in the selective multiplayer portions of the game, really will enjoy our community, because this is what I love about the community. It helps itself, and it creates events in the game on a daily basis. And you don't see very many games that are this amazingly diverse and so full of community activity for itself.
Guys, thanks so much for coming on, and best of luck with Shroud of the Avatar Forsaken Virtues.
The title role in Doctor Who is to be played by a woman for the first time in the 54-year history of the series. Jodie Whittaker, who starred in the ITV drama Broadchurch, will take over from Peter Capaldi, making her first appearance as the 13th Doctor in this year's Christmas special. Here's Lizo Mazimba.
After half a year of speculation from fans, not just about who the new Doctor might be, but whether there'd be a man or a woman, confirmation that the time travel show is making history.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/Shane.